Hello, everyone, and welcome to KindaSound. You're here with me, your host, Juliette Bryant. And I'm really excited for today's show because I have someone called Ray Lee Bacon, and he is an award winning organic gardener and a permaculture designer. And he has a gift for transforming even the smallest spaces into thriving, nutrient dense gardens. I love that part. For me, that's super, super
Mm.
exciting. But also, Ray specializes in geomatic permaculture design and has a unique blend of earth divination, geobiology, and permaculture principles. Now, he is the co-founder of the largest electroculture community online with over 220,000 members. That's a lot of members. And in
Mm.
this community, he teaches how to harness the natural energy to boost plants' vitality, improve soil health, and increase yield. So I'm really excited to get chatting. Thank you for being on the show, Ray.
Oh, well, I'm really happy you reached out. I am really excited, and I have been enjoying your podcast very much. And I share the background in nutrition as you do you, which will be extra interesting. And let's see what
Amazing.
we can share in this little limited
Brilliant.
time we have together.
So I think let's jump straight in. What is electroculture? Because some people are probably going, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I think most people are probably going, no, I've never heard of that. Uh, and that's quite normal, and that's why it's buzzy and it's growing. And essentially, electroculture for me, and there are different definitions, but for me, electroculture fundamentally means utilizing electric and magnetic forces to stimulate life. Now, when it comes to the reality on the ground, when it comes to working with plants, that's typically how it's used. It's used in gardens, it's used in farms, and presently it's mainly used with tinkerers, experimenters. And what that means exactly is that electroculture is more about harmonizing. For me, it's more the distinction that needs to be made. It's more about harmonizing with existing electric and magnetic forces that are all around us, that are untapped and poorly understood, and opening up a whole world of possibility when it comes to stimulating life. Um, Now, there's a whole other realm of electroculture in the scientific community. It goes more into a distinction, which is more of an active, dynamic electroculture. This is artificial. Usually, it's DC currents. It's typically associated with um, electrical systems, and it's human engineered electroculture. My emphasis, my focus has been on passive electroculture, which is more utilizing existing passive forms of electromagnetism that
So this is
exist
the
in
sticking in
nature.
of the kind of copper rods into the soil. Yeah.
This is like the acupuncture copper rod phenomena, and there's a big rabbit hole down there, but that is the gateway to electroculture. And the thing that's really for me is really compelling and shocking is the fact that electroculture, as it's known presently, it's this limited view of spiral antennas, coils, and rods, collectors, these different aerial devices. But really, there are dozens of electroculture techniques that have been applied and demonstrated to work for different use cases. So it's not limited to what we're seeing within our community.
So I don't know a huge amount about electroculture. I started getting into the use of copper a while ago. We use copper tools in our garden
Oh,
because
wow.
when you dig with copper tools, it doesn't disturb the earth's frequency so much. So we've been doing that for years. And then we have these copper spirals on the
Oh, that
inlet
is amazing. Look at
pipes of
that.
the house. Isn't that cool? There's a
So
company
that's
called
water inlet?
Exactly. So this has got
Oh,
water inside it and it
brilliant.
creates, you put it on the inlet pipe of your house, and it's by a company called the Implosion Center for Implosion Research Devices. So we've been using that, and I've got one that I wear as well. And we just started putting copper around things last year because we had a huge slug problem. There were
Oh,
thousands
yeah.
of mutant
Yeah,
slugs.
as you do in the UK. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were mutant last year.
Oh,
and
dear.
and so I started to look into this because I'm very interested in the energy of the earth and
Mm.
working with the energy of the earth to harmonize, like you were saying, that the electroculture you work with is about tapping into the Earth's resources to bring in more of that harmony. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. And fundamentally, so I just want to say, wow, that's an amazing device there for energizing water. And we also inline some magnets. That's also beneficial with increasing the viscosity of water. And as you
Mm.
know, as from a nutritionist standpoint, the structuring of water, our inner cells only utilize structured water. So that's coming from living food, and water that hasn't been denatured, usually water that comes out of the ground as a spring.
Mm.
Um, and that helps to restructure it back into its original form. But when it comes to how to use electroculture, I mean, I said earlier there are so many different devices, and I personally I like working a lot. You said you have an interest more in the geomancy, the work with ley lines and standing stones and that sort of thing.
Mm.
And for me, that's a whole world that isn't well understood within this community presently. And it's what I am most excited about, because fundamentally, my view of electroculture is that circling back to your question about the harmonization and utilizing forces that are existing already in nature. Um, are you familiar with the Schumann resonance?
Yep.
Yeah. So
But
that
maybe
range,
if you want to
yeah,
explain it
for
a
our
little bit for
listeners.
people listening.
So our Earth is enveloped in electricity, right? So we're not just electric, but our biosphere is electric. And the outer portion of the atmosphere, the ionosphere, is extremely charged. And in that area, as you move from the ionosphere and you work your way down to the Earth, there's an electrical differential of voltage. So typically, every meter that you go up from the surface of the Earth, you're increasing the voltage differential by about 100 volts. Okay. You get up into the upper atmosphere, it's full of ions because the Earth is being bombarded by solar radiation from the sun, not just photons and light that plants use to grow, but electrical phenomena as well, magnetic phenomena, plasma, cosmic rays, charged particles, and all of this energy does many things. But one of the things it does is it breaks up ions, so gases in the upper ionosphere, and then frees those individual electrons or protons. And then that is what's feeding this electrical exchange with the Earth. And we see that in discharge when it comes to surplus electrons coming down in lightning strikes. But the Schumann resonance is interesting because as the sun is hitting us, we've got this dynamo effect inside the core of the Earth, right? There's it's argued that there are layers in the center of the Earth that are moving about. I mean, I don't really know whether that's distinctively, it's argued. Um, but that principle is that it's creating the Earth's magnetic field, right?
Yeah.
And the magnetic field, it's further out than the ionosphere. It's further out than the upper atmosphere. And when the sun sends out a lot of magnetic energy, a lot of discharge cosmic rays, it hits that like a drum. And it literally is like a drum. And it creates this vibratory effect
Mhm.
that then creates what is referred to as the Schumann resonance, the Earth's heartbeat. What that is radio waves
Mm.
in the very, very like kilometers and kilometers in length. So very long, very, very few oscillations. So as the wave moves, very few oscillations per second relative to other areas in the electromagnetic spectrum. So it's very long, and that Schumann resonance is what living organisms on the planet have been trained to.
Mm.
It is what influences not just our brainwave phenomena, so our ability to tap into different frequencies of thought and creativity. Um, but in plants, this is where I think it gets really interesting because
Mm.
plants have evolved within a very specific range, not just amount of light that they're getting to grow, but
Mm.
electrical stimulation, right? So these charged particles, this differential of electricity in the atmosphere, but also this resonance of within the Schumann range,
Yeah.
about 7.8 8 something to 30 hertz. And hertz is a measure of how many oscillations per second. So when you think of our artificially induced EMF fields, such as 5G,
Yeah.
this is billions of times more oscillations per second than what is the natural range of the Earth's heartbeat, so to
Mm.
speak. So electroculture, as I said, passive electroculture, this is the distinction. Passive electroculture is working with these existing phenomena, among others,
Mhm.
and tapping into that in a way that can redirect these natural forces to either stimulate life or to mitigate imbalances that
Yeah.
unfortunately we've created on the planet.
So, thinking about what you just said, the thing that pops into my mind is, do you think the electroculture has been used, first of all, with two parts to it for a long, long time? Because my thought is, what if we placed these kind of copper rods or pyramids or these electroculture things along the ley lines to
Mm.
work with harnessing that energy? It that reminds me, there's so in England we celebrate St George's Day, and my husband Giles has really got into like the myth of St George and actually what the
Mm.
real story of St George is. And when you think about it, St George is about taming a dragon originally, not killing, and the dragons are the earth energy lines, which April 23rd was, the original potential Beltane because the calendars have all moved.
Mm.
So the earth energy is really waking up. So it's like this earth acupuncture. So St. George supposedly tamed the dragon by putting his lance of light into the earth and singing. That's kind of, when you break it down.
Interesting. His lance of life into the earth and singing,
Yeah.
akin almost like a lightning strike or energy exchange between the atmosphere, which ultimately is the sun,
Yeah.
and the core of the earth. Um, so this is interesting, really interesting. I think to really understand what you're asking, what is really important to distinguish is that the sun at its core, right?
Mm.
The sun is burning, it's bringing in energy into a nexus point. It is a nexus point. Okay. It's a cosmic nexus point. There are these filaments, they're called galactic filaments, and they move from galaxies, they move from stellar bodies like our sun, and it transports like a super highway, it transports hydrogen to fuel the sun's reaction. And some suns use more hydrogen than others, but they're ultimately exchanging information with each other. And as that reaction occurs, it creates the magnetic discharge of the sun. And then that is exchanging information with planetary bodies that orbit around that star. And
Mm.
our Earth, my view is that there's a continuum here. It's like there's an image you can hold in your mind of how neurons in our brain work. That two
Mm.
neurons, when they connect together, they're exchanging through the dendrites, but it's more visually, it's literally like electric currents that are passing, it's cords between, right? And this polarity of opposites and the union that comes between them creates life. So at its
Mhm.
core. And as the sun is exchanging information with the center of the earth, information is coming out of the earth and being exchanged with the sun. It's not a one-way street. I mean, some would argue it is. I, however, don't. I feel fundamentally that
Yeah.
all phenomena in this universe is an exchange of polarity, an exchange of opposites. And
Yeah.
so circling back about the concept of the Beltane, you said the sword or the rod, right? Of
Mm.
of energy.
Mhm.
And you're saying that the ley lines are waking up in this particular moment. Well, and it's true because as we get past the equinox and we get closer, we start to circle back closer to the sun, the
Mm.
exchange of energy intensifies, you know, and it's cyclical. It's like two lovers coming back together to meet, and that charge is then waking things up. And plants are the intermediary. on the surface of the earth. That's why
Mm-hmm.
they're green. It's like in the color spectrum, green is splotch in the middle, right? It's the union. It's also the heart
Mm-hmm.
chakra color, and for us, and there's reason for that. That's an aside. So the ley lines, I lays, I typically think of lays as being more of a human interacted layer of energy on the earth. If we look at it from what is currently known from a scientific perspective, and it's limited, is the earth has existing electrical currents that can be measured with uh, magnetometers and other devices. These are referred to as telluric currents. It's used in the oil and gas industry predominantly, unfortunately, but that is the Earth's electrical grid as we know it from a scientific perspective. And what is ultimately happening is its geometry entrenched in the geology of the Earth that is allowing for very specific congruent points that transmit energy, and its electric and magnetic fields that it generates. Now, that is the same principle as the galactic filaments connecting stellar bodies together. And it fits within geometry. And this is the important part, because when you hear about New Age concepts of the Earth's grid, and there's validity to it when you start to look at the Hermetic principle of the as above, so below
Yeah.
concept, right? Because the the geometry element is what's really interesting, because volcanoes, okay, volcanoes that
Mm-hmm.
transmit magma under the earth. Magma is full of iron. Iron is
Yeah.
the core of hemoglobin in our blood. It's what transports oxygen, life,
Yeah.
prana, life force. The same can be said with volcanoes that are bringing energy and magma through intersections of other volcanoes. But if you look at volcanoes on a grid, they form very specific geometric patterns, very, very, very specific
Mm-hmm.
mathematics. And what this is, to me, what this is saying and indicating is that the lays, or the energy grids of the earth, work within
Mm-hmm.
fundamental principles of mathematics, um, geometry, and it transmits energy. And the exchange between the sun and the earth and the waking up that we have after the spring equinox is because the exchange between cosmic energy from the sun and telluric energy from the center of the earth, they seek to unite. And there are points on the earth where these energies, due to geological features, right? It could be subterranean water. Sorry, that's Italian. Subterranean water.
Mm-hmm.
It could be intersections of different minerals. It could be quartz deposits, fissures, etc. This causes energy to bubble out of the earth, electromagnetic waves, creating standing waves, right? And as that energy rises upwards, it seeks to unite with the energy that's descending. But if you were to look at it as a hologram, which the universe is, it is the same geometric principles all stacked like Russian dolls on each other. And when you have the movement of cosmic bodies, it fits within mathematical um, positions. And like a
Mm-hmm.
key that only works in a lock when it's sized just right, there are certain moments where areas light up because the connection
Yeah.
points overlap. And this is the fundamental exchange principle. So in the context of electroculture, you said, does electroculture go back historically? And yes, it does. I mean, it wouldn't be called electroculture. The term electroculture is a relatively modern phenomena that has became part of the lexicon in predominantly in the 1920s. But before, you can go right back to many ancient cultures that take where you are, standing stones and stone circles.
Mm-hmm.
They are antennas, essentially, and they're harmonizers, and they're creating unique cymatic, KindaSound. It's creating these unique
Yeah. Well, you wrote a
musical
very
signatures.
interesting article on the standing stones and lightning for your Substack. If anyone hasn't looked at it, your Substack is brilliant. I've been
Thank
diving
you.
into that over the last kind of week or so and really enjoying. But when you were talking about the standing stones being potentially these harvesters, or that's not the right word, collectors of this lightning energy, I found that really fascinating.
Mm. I think there are many layers to what standing stones were used for. But one of the things that isn't often recognized amongst geomancers and um, earth energy enthusiasts is the principle that standing stones, because they are nexus points, right? These
Mhm.
conductivity discontinuity points where the
So
geological
it's where the
features
Earth's
create
energy is coming up and the solar
vortex
energy is coming
coming up.
down. Yeah.
Exactly. And conventional archaeologists would say, well, standing stones were markers of constellations and stellar time cycles, etc. And indeed they do. But my argument is that they're not marking it for an arbitrary means. It's a technology,
Mm,
because
mm,
the precise alignment means that these energies can be more catalyzed more effectively at certain points in time.
mhm,
And that's why rituals, particularly overlaid in important moments, like the equinox, as you're
mm,
saying
mm,
earlier, and by bringing seeds to the center of a standing stone, up until the Green Revolution, farmers, albeit fringe farmers, would bring seeds from all over the UK and celebrate infertility rituals and
mm,
practices that were deemed pagan or, you know, alternative. But fundamentally, because fertility rituals that ancient cultures have practiced have utility,
yeah.
they function because there's a science that hasn't we haven't yet understood and
Mm.
given respect and reverence to. But by bringing that in, so may I break down like what actually is happening with seeds when they're getting charged in these
Yeah, I
modes?
mean, you've really got me excited thinking about that as you mentioned that, because I never made that connection of why they were bringing those seeds to those
Hmm.
sacred sites to charge them up. So yeah, please do. This is exciting.
So the backbone of any civilization is food.
Mm,
It's only in modern times where food is so ubiquitous and abundant and obesity is rampant that we even question that food is that important.
mm,
But for ancient prehistoric cultures, food was essential, and without it, you could not sustain a population.
mm,
And famines have always been part of humanity. So it became essential to understand how to facilitate more food in a harmonic way.
yeah.
And if we circle a little bit back to these nexus points, before stone circles were built, many people say, well, how did the ancients know how to align specific points on the land to create these geometric patterns that overlay with other hotspots around the planet,
Mm.
right? It's very specific, very precise. You connect a line from here, and it goes to here, and then it goes to there. And it's like you pull over here and it pulls there. And we look at it within our own frame of reference, which is the idea that it's a rational, mathematical, analytical perspective, but it's not. It's earth divination, it's intuitive.
Mm,
It isn't mathematical. In fact, it's a geometry that is ever present in nature. And I've always pondered, how do ancient people entrain themselves in a way that creates these hotspots that then become sacred sites that then have standing stones or pyramids or monuments, et cetera, et cetera. And for me, going back to prehistory, where humans were predominantly hunter gatherers, and there are periods perhaps where we weren't. There's alternative histories, but let's look at it from a conventional perspective that indeed we were. We were nomadic. And in order to sustain a population, you don't just need food, you need a diversity of the genome.
mm,
You need more people. Otherwise, you get inbred and eventually things implode upon themselves, right? It's
yes.
simple. But If you're nomadic and you're going from place to place, how do you unite different clans and different tribes together in ceremony where you can ensure that your gene pool isn't being tainted?
Mm.
And this is where it gets interesting, because I believe that before megalithic structures were built, that there were these specific sites, because of their unique ability to harness cosmic and telluric forces,
Mm.
created more ecological resiliency, created measurable tactile changes in the landscape that we can't see because we've bastardized the world around us with our own engineering.
Mm.
But because nature does work in mathematics and works within harmonics and fractals and these patterns, at the center of any fractal, you have a node. And at these central points, it's my view that a tree, an apex species, such as a tree, would grow enormously
Mm.
because it is that conduit,
Yeah.
right? It is that torus field that is uniting the forces
Mm.
together and then radiating that horizontally. Do you remember when I spoke about the cosmic, the galactic filaments, and then I
Yeah.
mentioned these magma flows and telluric energy? Well, there's another layer to that fractaling geometry, and it's the intermediary of trees,
Mm.
because they are the nodes. Okay, they are the suns that are transmitting energy between each other, where some are greater than others, that have more hydrogen to
Mm.
fuel these reactions, right? The trees, some trees are more important than the others. That's the reality, and it's based on this geometry principle.
Mm.
And therefore, how trees are doing it is they're using mycorrhizal fungal networks, right? They're using um,
The mycelium
the
network.
mycelium, right?
Yeah.
And the mycelium is it is working on electric exchange of
Mm.
information. It is signaling through electrical signals over vast distances. It can transport water and nutrients, minerals from areas of surplus to areas of need
Mm.
over kilometers.
Yeah.
And the points that's connecting them together are trees,
Yeah.
at least in the apex ecosystems. So this is my view. Massive trees, enormous trees, nomadic people revering the majestic beauty of these locations
Yeah.
and the greater amount of food and wildlife and
And shelter.
vitality and shelter, and they become landmarks.
Mm.
So that and if you're mapping stellar phenomena, then you know when the equinox is,
Mm.
and therefore you know we need to meet at this place and party. You know,
And that's why things like Beltane, the celebration at the beginning of May, um, it was always the tribes coming together and meeting for fertility rites because of that, what you were talking about, the inbreeding. So everyone would gather at these sites to connect as the sap's rising in nature and nature's doing the same thing. That mating would then happen all around. And it's interesting what you said about the trees, because so often there are certain species of trees which are ley line markers. So at sacred
mm,
sites, you'll generally have hawthorn trees at the entrance. And when you start to look into the energetics of the hawthorn, it's about the heart. And
mm,
it's known as also the fairy tree because it helps when you sit by it to remove the veil so that you can move deeper into seeing in a
mm,
different way. And yew trees, another one that are ley markers that are very often on these sacred sites. And again, the yew tree, especially at this time of year, produces an alkaloid, so that if you sit
mm.
under it, you it activates DMT in your brain, and you can see again, perceive these different realms of nature.
Interesting.
So maybe seeing the ley lines and actually seeing these nodal points more clearly because something has activated in your brain.
Well, that is interesting, and you think of the song lines of the Aborigines and their ability to navigate over vast distances in the
Mm.
hottest, driest, flattest, most inhospitable continent on the
Mm.
planet and
Mm.
find water where
Mm.
they need it, and meat. and some tribes to conceive and then to actually give birth at a specific tree, and then that person becomes bonded to the tree.
Mm,
Upon death, is returned to the tree. It all starts to kind of make sense, this motif. And if you look in where you are with the Druidic
mm,
history, right, and the reverence of the oak, and this
yeah.
goes back to what we were discussing, which was that the exchange of energy. Well, what is the greatest exchange of energy between that we can visually see between the atmosphere and the earth, which is ultimately through the apex god and the mother deity god, the exchange of energy that then facilitates life, right? This
Mm,
is the symbolism of it. It's
mm-hmm,
like male, female come together, life emerges. Um, the oak is one of the few trees that survives lightning strikes.
mm,
And lightning, being a discharge of electrons, it is attracted to something that is a conduit, right?
yeah.
That's why if you put a lightning rod in a field, open field, and you stand under it, you're stupid because you're likely to die, right?
Yeah, love that.
But the oak tree is also, its leaves have the highest concentration of iron than
Wow.
any other tree. So this is going back. You see the layers, right, that start
Yeah.
to form. And the sacred oak,
Hmm.
the most revered tree in European cultures.
Yeah.
And the the December 21st, right? The solstice, the winter
Mm,
solstice, and the white robed druidic priest that puts a dagger, a ceremonious dagger in his mouth, ascends up the sacred oak tree to cut off the mistletoe
mm,
and to bring it down. But this is the thing, is like the symbolism is that the mistletoe is is the only organism that I'm aware of that doesn't orient itself with magnetic fields. It moves itself from a nexus, a central point, outwards.
mm,
Whereas a tree is aligning itself with
mm,
everything.
mm,
It's aligning itself with the magnetic fields, the telluric currents under the soil. It's aligning its aerial portions with the sun and angles of light, but ultimately it's angles of geometry. It's not just our sun, it's other stellar bodies as well,
mm, mm.
mirroring a fractal pattern of the whole universe encoded in one tree. Like, this is the beauty of it all, right?
It's deep stuff, isn't
It's
it?
deep. It really is. And that's why I was happy when you invited me, because I think you can get this stuff, and maybe your listeners and your audience can get it. Whereas, I get bored talking about spiral antennas, like little coils that you make. And yeah, they're neat and they have utility, and you can, attract radio waves and stimulate, make a micro amperage current that stimulates plants. But like, at its roots, people are still just asking, what direction do I spiral my wire? I mean, that's great. And I don't want to belittle people who are new to the world, but there's so much to it. It's so deep.
I mean, I
It's so
guess
deep.
the thing is, we're what we do as a society is these concepts are kind of mind blowing almost, aren't they? You know, when you start looking at the telluric current, they're not mind blowing, but they are for the concepts of what we're taught in school and how our brains are kind of. Most people, we're so myopic in what we need to learn and take in that when you start to talk about these energy currents and these magnetic fields, people are like, "Oh, this is a bit much." But
It
actually,
is, and for a lot of people it is, and
yeah,
and it's a few amount of people that get it and want to pursue it, and that's great, because they are the lightning keepers.
but what you're talking about, with the trees, I'm very much I teach people about earth wisdom, about listening to the trees, about
Mm.
tuning into these frequencies. For me, it's more sound frequencies and the essence, their vibration that the trees are giving and the plants are giving and all of this stuff. And I guess when you look at what you're saying about the trees and how they're harnessing this energy and how they're really working with these different currents, a lot of it is going back to stuff Stein has been talking about, working with the biodynamics, working with the planetary influences.
Mm.
But I guess the electroculture is almost like people dipping their foot into this knowledge, isn't it?
It's a
And then it
gateway.
takes you on that journey of actually how vast and incredible nature's already doing this. It
Yeah.
is the electroculture, the ley lines are working with this, all of these energetic currents are like that, and we're going, how can we start to tap into this so that we can utilize this in areas, in other areas?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and that's the thing. It's humbling. Fundamentally, the more you know, you realize, oh my gosh, like, the universe is extremely ordered. That it's the level of human hubris at this particular moment in time is astronomical. But I think the beauty of these type of discourses is that it starts to reveal little nuggets that make you go, well, if I didn't know that, then
What else don't I
what
know?
about the fundamental things we take for granted? That
Mm,
and the thing is like in the realm of agriculture, because I worked as a professional farmer for about 10 years, and it's a hard life. But in the realm of agriculture, the organic movement, for example, has been around, what, 70 years?
mm,
A long time. And there are some champions, and the hippies in the 60s and 70s were like, it was millions of people were trying to create a movement, right? To
mm,
return back to organic, um, fallout of World War II and chemical agriculture and this myopic view of looking at things through chemistry alone.
mm.
And yet, with all of the pioneers in the organic movement, it's become mainstream. But even to this day, organic agriculture still represents less than 1% of North American farms.
Horrendous.
So people will often ask me, if electroculture works, why aren't farmers using?
Mm,
If organic works, why aren't farmers using it? Like it's such a silly question, because the truth is there are in the scientific community, and everything gets compartmentalized, but there are three life sciences,
mm.
right? Do you know what those are?
No,
Three life sciences:
what are they?
biology, chemistry,
Oh yeah,
physics.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, if you think of an analogy of a three-legged stool, what happens when you only have one leg? Maybe if it's like right in the center, it can oscillate and kind of
Kind of
balance.
balance it, but you can't move, can you? Otherwise, it will topple.
No. And then you add in organic and you get the other leg. But
Yeah.
electroculture is the physics side of
Mm,
things, right?
mm,
And personally, I like the conventional physics, but I more like the subtle
mm,
energy, because the deeper you go, you realize just how subtle things actually are and how little we know. But if we can unite or create, a good equilateral triangle and harmonize between the three life sciences and
mm,
integrate that into the way we work with plants,
mm.
the way we design landscapes, the way
Yeah.
we look at nature, then everything changes.
So, on that topic, let's say someone was wanting to get into electroculture. Obviously, the first point of call I would say is go onto your Facebook group, and all the links are going to be in the bio. So, you can get all the links to how you can get in touch with Ray and his incredible work that he's doing on this. But let's say that someone wanted to start, they've got a garden, they're growing organically, they're making their own compost. What can they do electroculture wise to start vibing up and harmonizing the plants and the earth and the sun?
Well, and I still go back to the spiral antenna, because, as I said at the beginning, there are dozens and dozens of different techniques.
Yep.
Like, and we spoke earlier, I hadn't even got into the connection that then sacred trees led into standing stone circles, and, creating greater amplification for different purposes. Because I could tell someone, go out and get some paramagnetic stone and some quartz and some diamagnetic stone and create this ratio of this and stick it in a tube at a particular point on the land that's going to work as a standing stone, and then harmonize your space, and your plants are going to grow better and all that. Like that's advanced.
Mm,
But the simplest thing to start with is to get a piece of copper wire
mm,
or aluminum wire, right?
mm,
I work in millimeters, so converting to American gauge is a bit confusing, but
No, millimeters
um,
is fine.
2 millimeter aluminum wire, 2.5 millimeter aluminum wire, gauge wire, or less than 1 millimeter copper wire is fine because copper is very expensive and it's a bit more rigid.
Mm-hmm.
And you take that, and I use these molds
Mm-hmm.
to make a spiral shape that is in the shape of it's got the Fibonacci sequence within it,
Yeah. So the golden mean ratio.
the golden mean ratio.
Yeah.
And it's like it is so to layer it back to what we were talking about before of like there's the physics side of things where like creating a copper wire that creates a spiral shape is attracting Schumann resonance
Yeah.
waves because the Schumann resonance I view is oscillating in the earth within geometry that would be akin to the form of geometry we see in all things from the way that the way that the way that the Schumann resonance in the sense in the way that the Fibonacci sequence is in the way that spiraling galaxies arch out, the distance between planetary bodies, the alignment of our digits
Yeah.
of our fingers, right? That kind of geometry is present in all things. So my theory is that well, that shape is going to attract a wavelength that is harmonic,
Yeah.
and that therefore it has a subtle energetic effect that is harmonic
Mm-hmm.
and is life promoting. From a conventional perspective, it's just radio waves hitting the antenna, creating a small electrical current. And then you got to transmit that electrical current from the aerial portion
Yeah. Into the earth.
down into the soil.
Yeah.
So that would be what I would suggest. So, in the simple way is to get the wire,
Mm-hmm.
and you spiral it. You spiral it from a central point
Mm-hmm.
in a horizontal plane. You just go overlapping circles like this, right? Spiraling outwards. And then you take it with a pair of pliers or what have you, and then you just pull it out. And then you can visually see what looks most harmonic to you, the shape of a spiral.
Yep.
And I have resources on that actually. So in the links I sent you,
Yep.
I have presently it's a free guide. It's about 30 pages, spiral antennas, lots of
Amazing.
pictures, and that's a good starting point.
Brilliant.
That's available for free. If anyone wants to leave it, this is the thing, like a little bit transparency here. It's all vanity metrics. Like our community is 220,000 members on Facebook. Great. But I mean, of that, we've got maybe about 10,000 people to our email list on Substack, which I've also given a link to, and we post content 3 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
written content. Um, and then occasionally put out guides like the Spiral Antenna Guide and encourage people to donate. But of the 10,000 people that we have on our list, and a good amount of those have downloaded the guide, I would say 10,000 we have made in about 2 years, maybe $1,000 in our business just from selling
Yep.
information. Not a lot of money in it,
No. No.
but it's ultimately because um, my vision with this is it's so early, it's so new, is just
Yeah.
get the information out there. And that's why we've
Totally.
made things by donation.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's why most people don't donate. But if you are listening and we want to support this and you like what you see at our Substack, you're welcome to donate when you download our guide. Or you can we're going to launch actually a extended Substack where we're going to go into more detail, $5 a month, where we
Mm-hmm.
where we actually break down some of the application of a lot of the techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And we really want to crowdsource it amongst the community, keep a
Yeah.
price that's low enough that we can actually, because I'm not able to sustain my family. Like I still work the land and do other things, so it's like we've got to find a path where enough information is available for
Yeah.
free that the movement can keep growing
Growing.
organically, and those who
Yeah.
want to really take things further aren't priced out,
Mm-hmm.
so that it's like it's a baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. So check that out. If I may make a little call out for that.
Definitely. No, that it's brilliant. We need to support each other, I think, when we're expanding into areas that are so important for humanity's growth. Because, I think electroculture could be a really big part of the switch. Part of the argument with organics is that the yield. You can't get a large enough yield on organics. That's why I don't like calling it conventional, because I don't think it is conventional, but the you know, pesticide, herbicide, fungicide way of
Mm.
farming um creates bigger yields because you don't have pests and all the rest of it. But I think that the electroculture being brought into this could really start to shift that, because we're then looking at things in such a different way, because you're looking at how can we work with the earth, how can we harmonize the earth so that
Mm.
things can grow to their optimum. I mean, for me that makes the most sense. And
Yeah, and it does make the most sense.
and you've sent
Um,
pictures of the yields that you've got, the incredible cauliflowers and
mm,
things that you've grown, which look amazing. Your plot there looks absolutely incredible.
Thank
Uh,
you. Yeah, that
where
was
can
that photo. That's a flagship site I worked with a client, because I do work with people who want to apply these principles and design principles to their own homesteads or backyard gardens, etc. And that's a flagship project of someone who actually that he approached me and he says to me, um, I want you to make me a garden in the shape of a galaxy.
wow.
Like, I paused for a moment. I was like, so you're telling me you want like a spiral galaxy? He's like, no, I want it to have eight spurs that are all symmetrically going around. And that project was a diameter of I think it was about 20 meters. So it was quite big. And a total surface area of 100 square meters of planted area, 150 edible, medicinal, and therapeutic plant species,
Wow.
mixtures of annuals and perennials, polyculture, meaning that layered with different plants and different heights and different functions, permaculturally speaking,
Yeah.
together. And then that was my main experimentation when it came to electroculture was pre-charging seeds with pyramid technology, um, planting things with lunar cycles,
Yeah.
um, doing gridding work with the land with because that the interesting thing of that point was it happened, this particular person's plot of land was located at a very special ancient Etruscan necropolis. So the Etruscans predated the Romans. They were matriarchal
Hmm.
society. They were very much earth diviners, and they would use lightning as one of their primary means of divination to determine what area they would build their
Wow.
necropolises. So this is
Wow.
bringing it back, means that this place is like a nodule point, a hotspot. In fact, migratory birds pass over this area because, and this goes into all the layers of, migratory birds following
Following the
the
magnetic
subterranean
lines.
magnetic lines under
Yeah.
the soil. But this particular galaxy was placed at a nodule point with an upward vortex, and then the arches spiraled out to amplify that
Wow.
outwards. So like it was like the creme de la creme of what's
That must have been a joy
possible.
to work on that.
Yeah, yeah, it was. It was definitely an honor, and I hope there are more people out there who want to do
It,
incredible projects because that was amazing, and uh,
and is there,
and the
can
results
people
spoke for
find that?
themselves.
Can people find that on you? Do you have a website they can see that
Um,
on, or is that best on the Facebook? What's the best way for people to contact you?
so the best way is to head over to our Substack.
Yep.
So to subscribe to which is our email list, you'll get those 3 pieces of content every week.
Yep.
Um, get the guide. That's another way. And then at that point, you can just email me directly. Any emails that are given in our Substack will have redirect links. We have a website as well, but presently I don't have a website focused on geomantic permaculture design yet.
I mean, that would be epic to see, some of those projects, because that I think is where we're moving to. You know, I think you're probably a forerunner for that, because it's going to be, I think a little bit in the future for a lot of people to get that. But I think the electroculture is a stepping stone into that. So it's beautiful that you're able to do these projects for people.
Thank you. And and I think what I'll do is I'll send you the Galaxy Garden drone aerial shot. And if you want to use that maybe in the thumbnail, um,
Perfect.
then that'll show up there on the
Amazing.
YouTube version.
It's
Um,
I think I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours.
it
There's
would
so
be a
many
lot of fun.
questions. So many questions. Maybe you can come back on to the Kind of Sound radio show and
I
we can
would
have
I would love that. I would love that.
another chat
Absolutely. Yeah.
and go down a few more rabbit holes, because I wrote a list of questions and I think I've asked one.
Well, I'm sorry if I went
Oh,
on a lot of I
no,
did a
no,
lot of
no.
monologues. I hope
No,
it
no, not at all. It's I've been asking questions not on my list because it's been so exciting, and I think that's the joy of it. It's there's so many different avenues we can explore, and it's been so exciting. And you've put pieces of a puzzle together for me, that I hadn't connected. So that's really
mm,
brilliant. And I'm sure if you did it with me, you did it with lots of people listening. So
no, well that's
thank
lovely. I
thank you so
appreciate
much.
that.
As a closing thought for
Mm.
anyone listening out there, what would it be?
Closing thought. Well, you remember when I spoke about all of these geometries from the macro to the micro?
Mhm,
And I said that plants are a nexus point because they are the intermediary on the surface of our Earth, right?
mhm,
And the green is a representation of that. Well, another nexus point is a heart,
mhm,
and really at the core of this work, for me, it's the steward, it's the human. It is that heartfelt connection. And from that place, then we can start to actually connect to all these different layers without without the mind. Because if you really want to design and work with plants in a harmonic way, you need to move from here
mhm.
and and get out of your head. I mean, you do need solid horticultural foundations so that when you move in a way that makes sense. But that is the compass, and you don't need to know everything in order to have an impact on the world around you,
Mhm,
because plants are in tune with us
mhm,
right here,
mhm,
and you can communicate with all living things just by your being alone,
mhm.
your presence. And that is what I'd like to leave with your listenership, because it's the easiest way to get started. And ultimately, every single article or post that I might ever write on our Substack or elsewhere, it all pales in comparison to that.
Mm,
It's all leading people to that
mm.
ultimately, and your listenership will get it. So
That's
there it
so
is.
so beautiful. So
Mm,
so beautiful. And I think that's how I've always followed with growing stuff, is I've never really had a huge clue. I've had a bit of a clue, and I've just kind of followed A, my intuition, and B, my heart and the plants. And I think, I know when to water the plants in the house because I hear them calling me. It's like, water
mm.
me, hey. And
Help,
and
help.
I've no, they're not quite that bad. Um, but I've spoken to lots of people who are like, oh, I was somewhere and then my plant just popped into my head, so I knew I needed to water it. And these are non-spiritual, not because there is that interaction. We are part of nature, and I think that's my core message for my
Mm,
work, is like we are part of this beautiful world, not separate. And that's
mm,
in essence what you're saying. We're part of it all, so we can commune with nature because we are nature. We've just
mm.
forgotten that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And that is the gateway. It might start with a little spiral antenna, but ultimately those who stay at it long enough will come to this profound realization and realize that we are actually amplifying the union of all things if we choose to.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on KindaSound. It was
Mm.
such a pleasure to have you
Likewise.
here and to
Yeah.
chat. And I hope you've all enjoyed listening. All the links to Ray's information are in the bio, so please do check that out. Go and join his Substack at Electroculture. So it's substack.com at Electroculture. Go and check him out. Thank you so much. And I'd love to have you back on the show.
Well, I would love to come on, so I appreciate it.
Amazing. Thank you.